Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pale Book Club. In this episode, we're closing off the picture of Dorian Gray. I am Curious, and with me, as always, is...
Gray from Dorian Gray.
Old man, I thought you died. How are you alive?
I'm the portrait version. I'm the Indian portrait version of Dorian Gray.
Oh no, the Indian watched Dorian Gray. The woke mind virus has destroyed us all. Do you remember, Gray, when we last left off?
Well, I think we left off right when Dorian Gray fell in love.
Yes, Dorian Gray fell in love. So we're not going to do a summary of what this whole thing is. You can watch the previous episode where I definitely don't mistake some author for other authors. But we're going to start with chapter 5 all the way up to the end in chapter 20. And yes, so we start off with Dorian Gray falling in love with a theater actress, Sybil Vane. Sybil Vane.
Yeah.
Yes. And, he describes how he meets her in this really decrepit theater with, the common folk. We're going to get into that. There's a lot of the common folk in this book. Yeah. But he was like, the Jews. Oh, my God, the manager's a Jew. He also says that a lot. He meets her, and she was just, so good at acting that he was completely enraptured. And then we start chapter 6 with Dorian telling Henry and Basil, his friends, saying oh my God, you have to see her. You're gonna be convinced of why I wanted to marry her. Oh yeah, he proposed to her as well. Whatever. And let's just give a summary then of what happens a little bit, and then maybe up to the end. Then we can get into what specifically happens. So chapter 6 actually starts off with Sybil's family, and they were talking about her brother, younger brother, I think, James.
Older, because he goes off to.
He says he's younger. Yeah, because Sybil is 17. And he's 16. Right. Yeah. And he's going off to sail in Australia or something, and he doesn't seem to have a good relationship with Sybil's and their mother.
He's going to India, right? Or he goes to India afterwards because.
But he initially sets out for Australia, I think.
Okay,
I think that's how it is. Yeah, and they don't seem to have between James and the mother. There doesn't seem to be a good relationship, and then eventually it's revealed that. Fucking obviously, it's always about a man in her life, Okay, you know what? I'm not gonna get into that. But and then Sybil is just we get this short but effective character portrait of this person who's completely stuck in my Prince Charming, completely stuck in the characters, completely stuck in romanticism, and she kind of thinks, that's good. Love is such a wonderful thing. I love to be this kind of irrational state, stuff like that. And then James was like, but he's from the upper class though. He's gonna fuck you over. And then she's like, oh no, and everything's gonna be fine. Yeah. And then later, when they actually go to the play, she plays horribly. For the first time that Dorian has ever seen her. And then Basil is disappointed. Henry's like, let's go drink or something. And then Dorian is just completely baffled. And he goes backstage to Sybil and is like, what happened? Why were you so dreadful? And then Sybil's like, yes, I've been dreadful, Dorian. And it's because I found something real to love. You, right? I'm not stuck in the fantasies anymore. And this is a really interesting idea. And then Dorian... sees that, and he completely loses interest and just starts, I don't need you anymore. Get out of my life. I'll never see you again. And then Sybil's like,
she fucking kills herself.
You're jumping the gun, but she kills herself. But that comes before, right? That comes after Dorian goes home and looks at his portrait, the picture of Dorian Gray, and something has changed. A little expression change has happened, and he looks more evil. He looks like he's got that dog in him, right? And then he's so scared of the dog, and he's like, "Oh, that's my go-to conscience. Obviously, I'm gonna write a love letter or something saying, please forgive me, Sybil. I'm gonna marry you." And then he doesn't get to send it because Henry brings the news that she killed herself. Yeah. And oh my God, and this sequence is it's I don't know how to describe it, but they're talking, right? And then. I kind of just want to quote the book. Just give me a sec, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is from chapter 7.
Yeah.
So I have murdered Sybil Vane, said Dorian Gray, half to himself. Murder her as surely as if I had cut her own throat with a knife. Yet the roses are not less lovely for that. The birds sing just as happily in my garden, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, but not, what does it say? And now she is dead. My God, Harry, what should I do? You don't know the danger I am in, and there's nothing to keep me straight. She would have done that for me. She had no right to kill herself. It was selfish of her. And I was like,
yeah.
jeez. And yeah, they were talking about how, like, he actually isn't that affected by it. And then Harry does this whole spiel. We'll get into this later, hopefully. But yeah, basically he's like, don't worry about it. Woman. And Dorian's like, yeah, woman. Yeah, woman. Woman. Women.
The men of the woo.
Yeah, but we're going to get into that in the regular episodes, hopefully. But yeah, it's been really cool seeing the Disco Elysium devs popping up again and doing their own thing. Anyways, Dorian Gray, a much worse piece of media. Okay, I'm not going to say that. But yeah.
Yeah, so like one thing that like stood out to me. So I wrote a short story, right? Did we talk about this in the last episode?
No, we did not, but it was like right before you were finishing it.
Okay, yeah. So I wrote a short story, and like afterwards, I've had more ideas for other stories, like fiction stuff. One common thread that I notice that I come back to, or like my unconscious or whatever, goes back to every time I have an idea is that, I'm really interested in like theater actors for some reason. For some reason I do have like my theories, but I think one of the reason why is that because people themselves are, we're all actors to some extent, right? Society itself is like a play, dramaturgy. Right?
Yes.
So
wait, that's a vampire in Kizumonogatari. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and also it's a song by Eve, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, so dramaturgy, it's like the idea that that society itself is like a huge stage, and we're all actors. And whenever we enter different aspects of society, say the home, the school, etc., we play different characters. Well, subtly different, that is. That's why I kind of find them interesting, because theater actors are like, they're kind of like they're what they do for a living is what other people do, in a different sense, I guess.
Yeah, it's like they're rendering the experience of like living explicit.
Yeah, exactly. I had that render explicit thing in my mind. I just didn't want to say it because I've said it so much. Anyways,
well, you know what? I'm less pretentious, so I can say it.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess that's kind of why, and we can see this in Sybil Vane, as you said. She plays so well because she's been living like her fantasy, basically. She's a working class girl. Her parents are not parent. Her mother is a working class woman who they're not really, they're not rich like Dorian. They're very lower class. And so she doesn't know like the happiness of life, I guess. So she's been living her fantasy through her plays or through her art. And when she finally gets to experience this wonderful thing, love with Dorian, she no longer wants the fantasy, because the dopamine from love, I don't want to say dopamine, but like the happiness from love is much more overpowering than what she gets out of her plays. And so she plays.
But there's also the thinking that, love, this whole idea like she's really into, it's also just another form of fantasy, right? It's not.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, okay. But like, I guess. I guess that's why Sybil Vane actually like she stood out to me, even though like she's not really like that big of a character in the whole whole span of the story. But yeah, she's a great character, and also like her final sentences before she collapses and he leaves her, and then she finally dies, is also very, very, very good.
What does she say specifically?
Yeah, hello?
What does she say specifically? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. I got a notification. I thought it was you. Anyway, Yeah, it's her revealing. She knows why she can't play well because she's in love with Dorian. It's like she has embraced her thing. I haven't copied. I haven't noted down exactly what she said, so I can quote it. But I really liked her character very much. And also she's also like the first victim of Dorian Gray, if you can call it that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
To add on a bit more about the actors thing, because I definitely share a similar, well, not in creative stories exactly, but just in life about theater actors and actors in general. I recently watched the video by Trixie, who's been actually, Trixie, formerly known as Digibro. She has had her rough patches with like content and stuff, but now she's producing. Again, she's like basically living life for like 4 years, coming back with a new perspective, and now her stuff is like genuinely really good. Some of the best anime stuff I've seen in a while. And she wrote like a 1 hour 20-minute video on Perfect Blue, and she kind of talks about how like everybody is so fascinated by actors because nobody fucking comprehends what they have to go through every day. Like it's just like And they were talking about that, really interesting. And also, I know a few actors, and I used to be in a theater troupe for a very brief amount of time. And just the amount of like yourself you have to bring out to be like, slam me onto the fucking table and look at me. That kind of energy was so fascinating to me. So I definitely saw that as well. And yeah, I wanted to say something else about Super, but I forgot.
I mean, it's fine. There are like a lot of other stuff that happens afterwards because I think in the whole span of the story, I think this part is probably the weakest, even though it's very it's very good. It's still perhaps the weakest arc, I guess. Yeah, for me at
weakest
least.
Arc.
Yeah.
What do you think is the strongest arc then?
Probably the beginning part. Probably. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Why would you say that? Not. I thought you would say like the end or something because that's where everything kind of comes together.
But like the beginning part is basically where the foundation of the story is like put into place.
Yeah.
And then honestly, okay, here's one thing. Here's one rant. Not a rant, but like I did not like this about Dorian Gray. I think it was chapter 11. I think I almost fucking skipped it. It was so
Jesus
goddamn
Christ.
boring.
Yeah, same. It was just like, oh, now he's doing pottery. Now he's into Catholicism. I don't care. Like,
yeah. I think the one note I have about it is chapter 11 is so goddamn boring. Oh my god. And then the next note is he fucking killed Basil. Fuck.
My exact thoughts. But yeah, chapter 11 is just I think there's a certain appeal and a certain mood I can get into where I'm really appreciating the incredibly flowery prose that Oscar Wilde has. But chapter 11 just dragged on, and I didn't enjoy it at all. But once you kind of glaze through that, it actually gets good later, so it wasn't too much of a complaint for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we can summarize a bit more of the story, and then we can get into what actually happens. So Sybil Vane kills herself. Henry consoles Dorian in the worst way possible, of course, because it's Henry. And Dorian is like, oh, okay, I'm gonna hide my... No, that's not what happens. Henry then gives Dorian a book where he basically goes, that's just like me, for real. And then he decides to convert to hedonism, and he puts that portrait of himself, like he locks it in his childhood bedroom or something.
Yeah. No, attic? Is it an attic?
Yeah, but it's basically like a place where he used to live as a child.
Yeah.
And then, he goes off, this is all like exploits, and then we time skip until he's like 38, and he's just like, his reputation has soured so much, but because he's a pretty little boy, people still invite him to do stuff, and all the time the portrait is like degrading and it's looking worse and worse. And then and then he kills Basil. Basil, he reveals the portrait to Basil because Basil's like, hey dude, are all the rumors true? Also, I love you. Also, I'm infatuated with you.
Yeah.
He just drops that. Well, he drops that before, but I thought it was so funny. I was like, okay, this is a very homoerotic book. And then Hazel's like, Basil's like, Dorian, I have a confession with you. Anata daisuki. And I was like, wow, this is very explicit. And then Dorian's just like, oh, you like me very much. Thank you, Basil. Let's go have tea. It's like, you pussies. You pussies. You knew where this is going to go. Yeah, then he kills Basil. I actually really like how he describes how revealing himself to Basil and Basil's reaction pulled him into such rage. Obviously, you fucking cannibal yandere fuck likes the part where he stabs people. Obviously.
No. It was specifically the part before he stabs him, where it's like he describes how infuriating and how full of hatred and malice he feels that moment.
Yeah.
I really like that part because I'm not gonna say because, okay.
Okay. We're definitely gonna put the link to Gray's short story in the description. Go read it. It's a fun time. It's very fun. Well, fun depends on your definition of fun, but unlike him, unlike me, he's actually made something of himself. So let's celebrate that for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you should also do it.
Soon. All right. So yeah, he stabs Basil, and then he what's the next thing? I guess Jim Vane comes back and it's like, you bitch, you killed my sister, and then he I think he avoids him.
He tries to he tries to kill him, I think. But then it's been so long since her death that
nobody cares.
He expects the man who killed her, or like the man who basically killed her, to be a 40-year-old person, but like since Dorian is so young and beautiful, still not young, but like his face, it hasn't changed, by the way. That's kind of the thing.
That's the whole thing.
His face remains like the exact same as when he was 17. It remains beautiful and like young, while the portrait like ages and turns into a monster, basically. As
I wonder if like Araki, the JoJo author, has a similar portrait in this house.
Maybe. And probably the portrait is of him kissing Rohan Kishibe. Anyway. So he brings Dorian to the light and sees that his face is actually very young and not that it does not look like that of a 40-year-old, and he lets him go, basically.
I forgot about that part. But Dorian is haunted by that. He's like, goes to the Duchess's house in the countryside. He's like, oh no, this guy's gonna kill me. My sins are gonna catch up to me. And then he dies. And then he's like, okay.
Yep.
Right? That's what happened. And then he's like, wow, my sins will never be revealed. But then he's like, I want to do good now. But I don't want to change. Fuck, what do I do? And then he decides to destroy his portrait. I might be skipping a few things, but that's what I remember. He decides to destroy his portrait. And the moment he stabs the portrait, we cut to a different scene of people discovering a dead, monster-looking old man stabbed in the chest, lying down on the floor, dead, and the beautiful portrait remaining the same.
Of Dorian Gray,
And that's the last we get. That's the story of Dorian Gray.
It is. So like, one big thing that I have to like say, I think did we? I don't know if I said this earlier, but the Picture of Dorian Gray is a classic, and one thing about the classics is that there's a very intriguing pull that each one of their stories have. Each one of their like story beats have. This is a story about a young man whose portrait ages instead of him. Right, and then other classics as well. I think we did mention Crime and Punishment, about a man who kills for the sake of an idea, basically. And then there's probably there are other classics as well. I can't think of what. I haven't read as many classics to be honest.
Boku no Pico is about a pure love story between a man and a child. That's
okay. That's a different kind of classic. I'm not.
It's a classic in my heart, Gray.
And then what other classic is there? I mean, that's it, right? That's the two classics.
That's only three classics.
Yep. Boku no Pico, Picture of Dorian Gray, and Crime and Punishment.
So what's the point you were gonna make with this?
The point was that all classics have this very intriguing pull that not all books have, not all stories have. I don't know what to call it. Like not all like it's not just the hook of the story. It's a very I don't know, philosophical.
I think I think maybe it's because classics they tend to more symbolic discussions and like more like broader ideas, and also because they've been studied to death. So like when you look at something like that, you kind of get the idea. People definitely have studied this particular passage for thousands of hundreds of years at this point. So there's that like air to it. But yeah, I do agree. Like there's also the ideas, like the vibe they give off, the vibe, the riz of the classics.
Yeah.
But yeah,
also,
I do agree with that.
I have a note here. I don't exactly remember which chapter. It says, in himself, the various moods through which the world spirit had ever passed, loving for their mere artificiality, those renunciations that men have unwisely called virtue, as much as those natural rebellions that wise men still call sin. And I say, the Weltgeist mentioned, the world spirit.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a very good quote as well.
This book is full of good quotes. I think we can get into that when we talk about. I mean, we talked about Henry before last time already, but this time, God, I mean, he's not as prominent in the latter half of the novel, but in the first half, it's just like, oh my God, it's all Henry. He instigates everything that happens in this novel, and you have to do that by really crafting a character that's interesting to read. And I definitely think they did that. I basically compiled a bunch of quotes called the best of Lord Henry. They're like long as fuck. Oh God, he goes on and on and on. But there's a few that I like. Let's see. For example, you must have a cigarette. A cigarette is the perfect type of a perfect pleasure. It is exquisite and it leaves one unsatisfied. What more could one want? Stuff like that. And then the one where he talks about like, there's a lot. But yeah, just his ideology shapes so much of the book. And it's so hard. I mean, you can just boil it down to hedonism. But if you actually go into it, he kind of, it's just you don't get the idea that it's a ideology, like a ethic that he lives by. It's just a completely different way of life. Like he criticizes the society, but he also embodies it. He embodies the fucking upper class, fucking the common people, the common folk, and and it's such a. Every time he's on screen, sometimes he does go on for way too long, like most of this novel is. But I do really appreciate some of the ideas that some ideas really popped out to me. I don't want to talk about it more, but you had something.
Henry is. I really like his character, but also I think by the end of the book, you kind of start to hate him, not because the author, not because he intended to be he's intended to be hated. I'm not saying the author intended something because the author is dead. Anyway, I'm saying that it's not written like in the plot. He does something bad and therefore you hate him. I mean, he does basically make Dorian who he is, kinda. But you basically start to see how not stuck up, but how weird his whole position is. He's I don't know, I guess you could call him he's not a socialist, but like middle class socialist kind of vibe, if that makes sense.
Oh, I don't,
he's not a socialist, but like my point is that
stuff to be like,
what
is your point?
He's like, no, don't ask me what is my point. That makes me okay. I don't have a point. I'm just,
makes you
I'm
anxious.
Yapping.
It makes you worried. Makes you scared, little baby.
No. I have another quote from him. The only horrible thing in the world is ennui, Dorian. That is the only one. That is the one sin for which there is no forgiveness. And I really agree. If I recall, I sent you that one poem by T.S. Eliot, The Shallow Man.
Yeah.
And the reason I really like that poem is because it paints a portrait of a world that's filled with people who are hollow and they're shallow. They don't care about anything, and then they just go on living basically now today. And that world, that is ennui, isn't it? But the thing is, Lord Henry, he's also like that. He also really does not really care about much at all. And that's kind of thing. He's like the opposite of practice what you preach. He's very,
Well, yeah. I think, I mean, in a certain sense, you could say that he thinks the only way to care about things is to be spontaneous, is like live in the moment. Like, and any promises of like faithfulness is like something weird or something. Like maybe it's just, okay, there's definitely like a trend in the book of
like,
constantly just calling out people. What?
Yeah, no. I think it's like I don't think he has a set in stone type of belief / philosophy kind of thing. It's like that one interview or something that Zizek did where he's like, I'm against wisdom because you can make anything wisdom. Live for don't indulge in earthly pleasures and look for redemption or salvation in the heavens. That's wisdom. But then when you say carpe diem, there's no heaven, live in the moment, that's also wisdom. And then you can say the exact opposite, and that will be wisdom, right? And that's kind of the thing with Henry as well.
That's very
you can
true.
say everything, anything at all. It all sounds very. Not fun, but like very fashionable out of his mouth, basically.
True. Yeah. And I think that's the brilliant little touch of this character. Because, what I want to say is that, like, there's many points of the book where Basil or somebody else is like, what did you say about, what do you mean by that, Henry? And he's like, what? What did I say? I forgot already. I forgot. Whoops. And it's like, a lot of it is just on the fly, and it's left to interpretation how much he even means it. And sometimes when he says he really means it, it turns out that, he's not practicing what he preaches. So, like, I think, what you said, I didn't know about the Zizek thing, but it's so perfectly encapsulated. Like, everything he says seems like a wisdom because he doesn't, like, there's no, like, underlying principle behind the man. Like, he just say whatever. And, that's very interesting.
And therefore, he is the hollow man.
Yeah, he is the hollow man. And one of the ideas that he kind of bounces around with is the idea of modern. And this is definitely a thing that's probably more relevant in 19th century society. Now we can't really there's a different form of that, right? But he talks about modern in different ways. Like, for example, he talks about modern as like, I can't sympathize with suffering and the modern sympathy for suffering is so weird. Or like, I can only sympathize with beauty and art and stuff like that. But then he later says, the middle class, they're not modern enough. The middle class people who like care about love and like caring about other people and shit, they're caring about medieval values. We are modern men. We don't care about that anymore. And I was like, what? It's like contradiction, but I think there's also a part of that that's saying like, it comments on class and also alienation under. I don't know. I'm not gonna go there. I don't know enough.
Another note that I wrote, that rhymes. I mean, aside from the witty, cynical shit Harry says, the upper class British society in this book is utterly repulsive and boring. No wonder why middle class hipsters like this book. They're really just really annoying. And hopefully, I'm sure that's intentional. I don't think Oscar Wilde was like a super. I don't know much about him, but I didn't like a lot of the characters, and I think I wasn't supposed to like any of them, at least from like my perspective. So, I mean, talking about not liking somebody, I mean, it's Dorian Gray. Yeah, he's like, I think I called him an asshole somewhere in my notes.
Bro, like half my notes because in Kindle where I read it, because I'm a 30 Kindle guy, you could highlight things, but you can also note things at certain points. And like I highlighted a lot, right? Just like, this is for further discussion. But by the end of the book, I just have several notes of like fuck yous across the whole like page, because goddamn, this guy is such an asshole. Oh my god. Like, I didn't look up a lot of YouTube reviews before we did this, because I don't want to I want to have a more authentic discussion, I guess. Even though it doesn't matter, you should probably watch other reception. But one idea I did look on that people were talking about is narcissism. Like, people were saying that
there's a lot of
narcissism. And then, like, I don't know enough about what narcissism really is. Is it just like liking yourself a lot? Like,
I mean, it's like self-obsession, self-centeredness, I guess. I mean, Han has a different thing with narcissism and how everybody's narcissistic nowadays. Due to how our society works. But it's just liking yourself very much.
Everybody has a picture of Dorian Gray. That's your Instagram page.
Yeah, that's true.
That is very true. And
This is very true. So here's like one bit. Here is all. This is when this is his reaction, not his reaction, but like his like what he is perceiving when Sybil is crying at his feet. Here is always something ridiculous about the emotions of people whom one has ceased to love. Sybil Vane seemed to him to be absurdly melodramatic. Her tears and sobs annoyed him. That's like, oh man, it's very yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible. But speaking of portraits a bit, there's another idea that I really found interesting in this book, and it's like the relationship between art and like how people perceive art and stuff. And I'm certain, Oscar Wilde says all art is quite useless. He definitely has a lot of thoughts on it. But for this book, right, it feels like art. First of all, the portrait, right? The center of this. It's a reflection of a certain point in time and of the painted and also the painter, right? Yeah. And it shows that artwork can stir something in us, and artwork is powerful and stuff like that. But what does Dorian do when Sybil dies and he receives the news? He's like, oh, this is like a play. This is like such a tragic play. And I was like, I am writing my first love letter to a girl who is dead. Dun dun dun. Like, he saw it so dramatically, and then this is why he kind of was in part able to take it at a distance and be like, I'm actually not that affected. And he tries to, even though, right, he does horrible, well, not horrible, just like really, really sociopathic shit in life. Later on, he always, centers it on a curiosity to find beauty and, in the moment. Like, that's what hedonism and stuff like that. So he is trying to basically, in a way, make his life art. Like, he doesn't want to, he wants to live in the art, right? And I found that really interesting. I was writing something just like for some other project, and I thought about this Hideaki Anno quote, not a direct quote, but he said something similar. It was like, before the 80s, people who made anime, they were men who lived real lives and they came back and put it into the art. But we're TV babies, like we were raised on media, and all we know is fucking Ultraman and shit. And he was talking about how like people's perceptions have otaku, basically, like otaku lives in the fantasy world and stuff like that, and then this is how so much of Ava is what it is and stuff. And it's like, wow, that's a interesting connection from like more than 100 years ago. Like Dorian is also you were kind of skeptical when I said that like it was a really interesting idea how Sybil discarded the art for the real, and I know that like the distinction shouldn't be that clear, right? Like but I do feel like there's something there about living in the art, and I don't want to say not perceiving reality, but like, I don't have any good. But I think you get what I mean. I just don't have a good wrap up to it.
Another thing is I don't really know too much about it to like actually talk a lot about. I mean, that applies to a lot of things we're doing in this thing here, but still.
We are experts on everything. We are medical advice.
We're doctors of everything. PhD in everything.
I have a PhD in life.
So, like, I think you can probably see, as with a lot of other media, a lot of connections with Faust. The play, the Dr. Faust, or like Faustus. Or
something. Because Faust is somebody who sold his soul to do what exactly? I don't know. He sold his soul to do something.
I think so. Like I know the synopsis of the play. Which is basically there's this guy, this professor, I think, who's like so big brain that he knows pretty much everything.
Awesome.
So he's bored because he knows everything.
Gray read that and is like, oh, just like me, for real. I know everything. I'm Gray. I'm Gray. I'm an Indian.
What the fuck?
I'm kidding.
Okay. Okay. So Faust one day makes a deal with Mephistopheles, which is basically the devil or like some kind of devil thing. To grant him powers or knowledge or something other stuff maybe, devil powers for 25 years. And then he gets the powers and he does a lot of stuff. That's probably what the play is about. I don't know what exactly that is. Anyways, after 25 years, Mephistopheles returns to basically drag Faustus, I think it's Faust, drag the person back with him to hell. So that's kind of also what happens here, right? The portrait, if you take it, it's basically a deal with the devil. Basically, he can, Dorian can live a big part of his life as a young person, a young, beautiful person. And then when he tries to, when he eventually tries to destroy the picture, he's basically dragged down to hell, which is death, which for a narcissist is probably, basically hell, right? Removing oneself from the world is probably the worst thing you can imagine if you are the single most thing that you love.
Yeah, and speaking of that, it's also interesting that the way the portrait degrades and ages is when he does something immoral, but it is also what the reward of the portrait is. It's the surface, it's the appearance, right? So I think he's linking like beauty with something, like linking beauty, like the outward appearance, with something in the inward. And I'm sure I mean this book, at least Henry, he's like obviously like beauty is the only thing that matters and stuff like that. But maybe if you take into account other characters, like how Basil thinks of like what Dorian should be, then it gets a bit more complex. And I just like that there's more layers you can dig into. Okay, another thing about art, right? So I read this book a long time ago. You might have heard of it. It's called The Moon and Sixpence. Have you heard of that book?
No.
Yes. Why did I say got it? Okay, no. I was like, I said got it. That's what I wanted to say. Got it. I was like, yes, you have. Yes, you have, bitch. No. So I was reading this and, oh God, I just got reminded of that book, because that book is about basically a guy who's like a fucking stocks broker or something. He quits his job, escapes his family, his friends, to bum around and be an artist. And then it's very much about like a woman or a distraction. I gotta make art, stuff like that. And eventually he gets into a relationship and the girl kills herself because he keeps doing art and not, I don't know, spend time with her. And he's like, oh, that fucking bitch, I don't like her anyways. and then the guy goes to some remote island with some like primitive people and to do more art until he dies. And the people are like, I guess he did more art. You can look at that. Well, like, okay, I don't want to like be dismissive, because I do find some parts interesting of that book, like the endless pursuit of what he wants, like why he's doing this. It's like it's kept a mystery. He's not just like, oh, I'm gonna be an artist pompous. Like he also suffers a lot. Like fucking, he's basically living in the dumps all the time. But again, it romanticizes the tortured artist archetype, which I'm writing a whole thing about. So and it's not good. But I just found like the idea of woman as like a distraction, like really similar to how Dorian Gray portrayed it. Like, this is where he says, "This interrupted Dorian. You must admit, Harry, that women give men the very gold of their lives," because they were talking about like, women are useless. And then Henry said, "Possibly," Henry sighed, "but they inevitably want it back in such very small change. That is the worry. Women, as some witty Frenchman once put it, inspire us with the desire to do masterpieces and always prevent us from carrying them out." It's like that is Moon and the Sixpence, which is written by a French guy, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's pretty sexist and it's pretty classist, but I'm sure a lot of that is intentional. So I'm not gonna put it too much past them. Because it's mostly because it's mostly written from the perspective of a bunch of pompous assholes.
Yeah.
And one last thing I want to say, just like piling onto the sexist and the classist part, it's also pretty anti-Semitic. Just for a little bit of like the Jewish mention.
I remember. Yeah,
they were like, "This Jew is so suspicious. We gotta take Sybil out of the hands of the Jew." And I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna go there. Israel and Palestine, okay? So I was looking into it recently. because I wanted to learn more about it. You know, it's a hot topic issue and it's getting worse and worse by the day. And I saw this really good video. I'm gonna link it down. No, it's by Novara Media, which interviews people like Yarovaski. No, fuck, I forgot the name. Techno feudalism guy and Zizek and people like that. And he was They were interviewing a professor in Columbia University, a modern Arab studies, and they were talking about the history between how this whole conflict came about. And surprise, surprise, it's the fucking British's fault because of course it is.
Of course.
And yeah, the whole thing is that let's see, I have the name pulled up. No, I don't. The Belfort Treaty that basically started a lot of the Zionism thing is signed by the same people. You can say like that. They probably had intentions to be like, guys, we fucked over the Jews a lot. Maybe we should give them a place to live, right? That's the initial thing. But then you look at who's signing it. Belfort, the guy who was the prime minister 20 years ago, and 20 years ago he signed a law basically preventing Jews from entering England if they wanted to seek asylum from the USSR, or not the USSR, Russian Empire. It's like, oh, if you think about that, then the law has a bit of a different connotation, don't you think?
Yeah.
The law is saying, the Jews, they can go elsewhere. Not us. Go away. They can go away for free, and they can kill a bunch of Arabs. Let's go. And it's just also they were doing it very much in part of like, oh, we're afraid that if we don't have a strong West supporting part in the Middle East, they're gonna turn on us. Egypt is already trying to fuck us over, and it's just god, they're all pawns of different people's games, mostly fucking white people, and it's just it's sad to see that even in Dorian Gray, they're like, goddamn, anti-Semitism is it's sad.
Yeah.
All right. What else did you have?
Yeah, there's a quote that I kind of want to talk about. I mean, this is Dorian Gray, but like it's also not quite.
Okay.
I mean, it's from Dorian Gray, of course. Crime belongs exclusively to the lower orders. I don't blame them in the smallest degree. I should fancy that crime was to them what art is to us, simply a method of procuring extraordinary sensations. A lot of, I mean, that's kind of true in a way.
This is the worst part. I'm assuming it's Henry, right, who said this?
Yeah, it is Henry.
Yeah,
so.
like fucking, like the thing about him is that he does spit sometimes. He does say some things that are like, god, it's not just purely from the perspective of like a pompous asshole who doesn't know anything about life. Like he has a lot of thoughts that are compelling, and that's why he's so interesting to follow.
Yeah,
but
he's more like an aesthetic than a person.
He's a vibe, he's the mood.
Yeah, he's a vibe. Whatever he says, he makes it his thing. He makes it. He vibes it.
Yeah,
he aesthetifies it.
Aestheticizes it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Henry
this
Core.
thing. Yep. This thing here is like, how serial killers exist and like how they like do weird kind of killings. Weird as in like they kind of make it a game or something. So, like you've probably heard of some certain killers who skin their victims and like make furniture out of it or something.
Yeah.
And then the clown killer, I think John Gacy or something. There's a lot of like that kind of stuff there where they're like reproducing like their killings as like, and by reproducing them or like turning them into a pattern, they're kind of like making a sort of thing
routine
out of it. Not a routine, but like a thing, right? They're making art basically in a twisted way. Like, why do they do that? It is a sort of self-expression in the same way as art is. And then he also says, Henry, I think, civilization is not by any means an easy thing to attain to. There are only two ways by which man can reach it. One is by being cultured, the other is by being corrupt. Country people have no opportunity of being either, so they stagnate. So like that's also true, as in like what civilization itself is. You can even like see this in like wider global historical sense, in that who were the first civilized, or like quote unquote the first civilized. We're talking in terms of white people, so like Western civilization. Who were the first to be civilized? That you would probably point to the British or like the West, Europe basically. And then nowadays, we're all civilized, but like a lot of this civilization comes from their conquest, which we can say is we're corrupted by civilization itself.
Yeah. Huh.
So like,
That's interesting.
yeah, it's very interesting. And also the thing with art, how his Oscar Wilde's own perspective of art being what it is. And there's also another thing where it's like, and it had all been what art should be: unconscious, ideal, and remote. So yeah, it's very
I do
interesting.
really. Going back to the art thing, because I do. I think it was Dorian who said it, not Henry for once. He was saying like, experience itself. Like he doesn't make art in the same way that Basil does. He sees art in people, right? Like Henry also sees art in things. So like he probably, if he saw the serial killer making furniture, he would be like, yeah, that's art. He sees, he notices that, and he cherishes that really. And speaking of that, there was this really interesting passage by Henry again where he talks about, what? The most interesting people are the people who make mediocre art. The people who trap themselves. Basil, people like that. They are. I think let's see. I don't know the specific phrasing anymore, but he says like Basil and those people, they're holding themselves back from the beauty that they're able to achieve, while the other people are lamenting that they can't reach what they want to reach, and the people who can't reach what they reach is way more interesting because they're failures, but that makes their story more interesting. Whereas in Basil, he's like all of his stuff,
Good
all of his life
make
is
bad
art.
Stories.
Yes. Take your hands off your neck and hold on to. I had one more thing. So, do you know about this YouTube channel called Better Than Food Book Reviews? I think this is a good cap-off point.
No.
Yeah, well, it's a more, I guess not obscure, 200k subscribers, but Digibro back in the day mentioned him a few times, so I knew about him. And also he recently did a review of Neuromancer, the book I'm writing an essay on in school. So I was like, that's cool. And I was like checking this guy's channel out. He also did a picture of Dorian Gray review, which I didn't watch. But what I wanted to say is, like, initially I was like, that guy, he drinks coffee. He's American. He seems like a chill guy. But then I started noticing a few things, like how he's really into Mishima. Like, he reviews all of his books, and it's like, okay. And then he reviews this one dystopian book that's about how, one day when animals, we ran out of animals, so we have to do cannibalism now. And, like, it was some, like, basically some, like, dystopian thing about critiquing capitalism and stuff like that. And he's like, it was like, this author is criticizing society. Yet this is a bestseller. It's literally that, like, you live in society, curious. And I was like, what? And then he talks about, and then he quotes Thomas Sowell. Do you know Thomas Sowell?
Wait, no. I've heard. No, I don't.
Thomas Sowell is an economist quoted by people like PragerU. Like, he's been debunked like so many times. It's like, and he was going on about like capitalism is just like the wind. It's a natural force, baby. I was like, God.
Oh my God.
And he made a video called like 10 things destroying your reading habits, and he laid out his philosophy for reading books. Books, it's about reading it and taking what you have from it, and then you use it in real life. And I was like, God damn it. Like, I just hate that reductive way of looking at things.
Same.
I hope with, whatever we're doing here, like, hopefully we're going to get better at this.
That's not what that is.
Yeah, that we don't devolve into that. Like, I think
Indeed.
it's more interesting to have ideas, highlight, like, these ideas and have discussions about them. Be
Yep.
constant progress, like Hegel, instead of trying to take some fucking value and then be like, now I'm going to work out because Mishima told me to. God damn it. Should we read one of Mishima's books one day? It could be really interesting. Like, I don't, I know his life story, but I've not read any of his books, and I don't know what it's about. What they're
Maybe
about. Really.
we can read Sun and Steel in the indefinite future.
Indefinite future, yeah. We have a catalog, the list in all capital letters.
The list.
The list. Let's see. We have a new segment here that I'm gonna make regular now.
Okay.
It's called Curious's Reading Recommendations, and it's not about reading, it's about music. It's about what I listened to while I was reading, right? So reading playlist, maybe that's a better name. And yeah, I have a few things. I forgot to do this last time, but I'll do it this time. A few albums that I found. Okay, so the thing is that a lot of people have different things about reading. Maybe you don't listen to music at all. Do you listen to music at all when you read?
Not at all, because I don't. I guess I don't like it's hard to focus, I guess.
Yeah. That's very fair. Yeah. Some people like
And also,
only
it kind of
instrument-
like fucks up the vibes.
Yeah, that's true. But I try to find things that fit the vibes. That's what I'm going for here.
Okay.
But yeah, some people only listen to instrumental stuff. Some people can tolerate lyrics. But yeah, there's a lot of different nuances in that. So I'm not sure this is gonna be true for everybody. But for this little Dorian Gray reading experience, I didn't want to go with anything generic like classical, obviously, But there's this one album by Björk, famous Icelandic singer, vocalist, art
like
pop
Björk.
queen. Yeah, her
Yes.
2001 album Vespertine.
You recommended me that. Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to it again, and man, like, the production is otherworldly. Sounds like it's like alien, and it's icy, and it's beautiful. And Björk's vocals are so goddamn passionate and in your face that it feels like you're just overwhelmed by like you're washed over by the sea of passion. And I felt that in some strange way. It connected to some parts of Dorian Gray. And
definitely.
I tried to picture that, but later when he goes on like chapter 11, I was like, the music's more interesting than the book by this point, so I turned it off. But before that, I was really into like especially the love themes, because this album, there's a lot of like imagery, but it's mostly about the person that Björk was going to marry at the time, and the way she's like, "Come to my hidden place. I love him. I love him." But it's great. It's super catchy songwriting. The songs are all beautiful. Some of the best things you'll ever hear. I definitely recommend that for one. And the second one, this is more different, is Erykah Badu. Her 2002, I'm guessing? Yeah, 2002 album, Mama's Gun. And Erykah Badu is a R&B star from the early 2000s. It's kind of sad that R&B is not a genre right now anymore. It's like, it's the evolution of like soul, like a form of African American music.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really chill. It makes you feel like you're in a coffee shop reading to this, which is like a different vibe for Dorian Gray, because Dorian Gray is now like a very romanticized book for Gen Z people.
Yeah.
Like I see my sister is really into it, even though I don't think she's finished reading it. She's like, Dorian Gray is such a vibe, dude. Well, she doesn't say dude. Slay. So yeah, if you want that taste of Dorian Gray, Erykah Badu, you'll feel cooler than people who are listening to Clairo right now. Do you know who Clairo is?
No.
Well, people will get it. All right, that concludes my segment, and next time I will make sure to not recommend Blade.
Okay. I'm quitting the podcast when you do. Okay. I guess that's it for this episode of what are we doing?
So go read Gray's novel. Not Gray's novel. Gray's story.
Novel. Yep.
It's called
I
Fire
call it
Eater.
Noveletta. Novelette.
What the fuck? So yeah, go read that. Fire Eater. It's an interesting little romp, and hopefully, also Grace video's out tomorrow or some shit.
Around tomorrow or the day after, probably.
Yeah, it's
Twin Peaks.
It's gonna be very hype.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
Will kill you.
Yeah. And for me, well, let's see what happens. I will say this: check out my blog on stillinlcl.blogspot.com. I'm planning to have more stuff on there. Just as like a low stake thing of doing something cool, mostly involving like music and other stuff about like life, ruminations and stuff. It's not fiction, but also trying to work on fiction right now. God, it's already 13th, and the deadline's very close, so I'm not gonna promise anything, but you might see something in a shorter form on the blog as well. So keep attention to that. Also, the short story is also on your blog, so I'm gonna link that in the description as well.
Yes.
And I'll hopefully, because after this week we're gonna have autumn holidays, I can get into making fucking videos again. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, see you guys later. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.
Yes, thank you. Bye.